welcome back to Hot Flashes and Cool Topics, everybody. Today, Bridget and I are kind of pinching ourselves that we're not really living in reality at this moment, because the guest we have on is an Emmy-winning actress. She's played two iconic characters in TV sitcoms. She was Debra on Everybody Loves Raymond. She was Frankie on The Middle, and has recently authored a book called Your Second Act, which we're excited to talk to her about. So welcome, Patricia Heaton.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Very excited to be here.
Well, like I said, we're kind of having a moment because we are so grateful that you took the time to come on and talk to us about the book and your career and all these fun things we're going to get into. But what we wanted to start with is that you recently authored a book called Your Second Act. What inspired you to do that?
My now canceled TV series.
Yes. I'm so sad about that.
Oh,
I'm sorry about that.
listen, thank you. Hey, I'll tell you something that has made me, and I think many other actors and writers and people in any form of entertainment industry, perfectly suited to handle a pandemic, is that we, in the entertainment industry, we live in a very unstable environment, and you never know when the rug is going to be pulled out from under you. And and so the pandemic certainly has been a quite the event to adjust to, and I think contributed also to the demise of my show. But you just never know. From year to year, we didn't know if The Middle was going to get picked up. So I've always lived in that kind of space where you have to be prepared to pivot to something new. And I think that, as difficult as that can be, and people say I could never be in your industry, it's actually a great muscle to develop, because honestly, life is not stable. And things change constantly, and you can't really sort of put your trust in a job, often in a relationship. I mean, I don't mean to paint this picture of you should be suspicious of everything and everyone, and never feeling security, but you just have to be prepared to roll with the punches. And we always have to do that in the entertainment industry. So it just is not, for me, not as big of a blow when things happen, because that's been my life for over 30 years.
Yeah, right.
It's a shame, because Carol's second act actually had a great premise, right? You were going to go back to medical school in midlife.
Yeah. It really did. I think for, women of our age, it was that kind of show that really speak to a lot of people. I think there was a few inherent difficulties, and gets a little bit technical, but doing a multi-camera show in a hospital setting that's supposed to be funny is tricky. And so now there's been other famous shows like Scrubs.
Right. That came to mind.
Right. But that's a single camera, and it just had a different tone to it, of these newer interns, right? So there wasn't a woman trying to prove herself who's in her 50s. So we had to find this balance of, we couldn't have Carol constantly, messing up for comedic effect, because then it was like, oh, older women really shouldn't be doctors, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So there was that kind of thing you had to do, where she had to kind of be successful, and yet that doesn't necessarily lend itself to comedy. So you have to find the other ways to find the humor. So it's tricky, and the hospital setting is very sterile, and on a multi-camera set with an audience, it's just not as visually interesting. There's a lot of different factors, I think, that contributed to it, to not really. Listen, wonderful writers, wonderful cast, loved everybody. So glad that I was able to work with Kyle MacLachlan, who I'd never met before. And what a lovely gentlemanly guy. I mean, if you only knew him from Blue Velvet, you would be afraid. Or Twin Peaks, you know, you would be
Right.
like,
Or Desperate Housewives. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you know? But he's actually just sort of this like old-timey gentleman type guy.
Mhm.
But Sabrina Jalise, Ito Igare, Jean-Luc Bilodeau, Lucas Neff, just like all these terrific, terrific people that I had not met before. And that's the beauty of our business is even if something isn't necessarily successful, you got to be with, you know, a whole bunch of people you hadn't met before who will now are lifelong friends.
Mhm.
And seeing some old friends. I was back on the CBS lot, and that's with a lot of the executives and people that I worked with during Everybody Loves Raymond. So, you know, it was a wonderful experience. I'm sad that we couldn't really make it work, but, you know, on to the next thing.
Right, right. And you have a production company, which you're 4 boys, if I'm looking at it. Yes, which I think is really, that's just a whole nother part of you that, you know, maybe the public doesn't know as much about you. And can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, and that's really sort of part of my second act. You know, my
Mhm.
book was inspired by Carol's second act, and it's just about people who have had to, as I said, pivot because of unforeseen circumstances in their lives and how they did it.
Mhm.
And for me, I found that I really love producing. People always say, "Oh, I suppose you'd like to direct," and I have really no interest in directing because a lot of it involves camera angles, which to me translates into math, and I'm really bad at math. And so
Yes.
I suppose you get people that help you with those kinds of things when you're directing. But um, uh, I kind of like producing, and that there's different types of producers, and I like creative producing, which is developing scripts and doing rewrites and putting the cast together and being involved in all those elements. And, you know, I think I write in the introduction of my book that I was sitting in a hotel room in Oklahoma City after 2 days or so of looking for a location for our movie and not being able to find one. And I just had a sort of a terror of thinking, why am I doing this? I've already done 2 huge shows. I could be sitting by my pool in California, and I'm in downtown Oklahoma City, and I've been driving in rural areas all day looking for a farmhouse. And I really thought, like, why did I do this? You know, I mean, it was just feeling kind of bleak. Oddly, the next day, and I had said to the other, the location scouts we were with, I said, "We're not going to find this, are we?" And they said, "Yeah, probably not this trip." And then that afternoon, they started sending us photos, and we found the house, and it was exactly the house we needed, and it was meant to be. And sadly, we had to shut down the movie 5 days, with 5 days left to go because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So we got 75% of the movie done, and we had to, you know, we still haven't finished it. So we've edited what we have, and that's another very interesting, very involved process. And it's going to be great, but we just have to finish it. So, you know, that's kind of, I'm doing it with our production company. My husband's directing, we're both producing, and it's been an amazing experience. And again, and this is again the blessing of this industry, is meeting all these wonderful people in Oklahoma, even though it's the home of the Tiger King, which we weren't aware of at the time we were shooting. It's funny because we were shooting the movie. We had to close down. We went home. Of course, the first thing everybody watched during the initial shutdown was Tiger King. And as we watched, my husband and I, our eyes widened. I said, "That's the courthouse down the street from the hotel we were in." Like, oh my gosh, that thing was right around the corner from where we were shooting. And we called our producer in Oklahoma and said, "Well, you kept that a secret." He said, "Yeah, I was thinking of telling you about it, maybe at the wrap party."
Oh my goodness.
5 days away, but
Yes. So how did you go about finding the people to include in your book, their second act
Well,
story?
Well,
first,
I'll
Oh,
tell
did you
you.
want to ask something
well,
else,
I just
Holly?
wanted to say so the listeners understand your
Oh.
second act book is written, you tell a little bit about yourself, but then you have
Mm-hmm.
14 different people that talk about a change in life, whether it was forced upon them or you know, a choice that they made. And then you do a question and answer for each person. And you do Patty's points, which is great, kind of what you got out of the story. And you use then you give some notes. What inspired you to write it that way? And then, like Bridget said, pick and choose those people.
Well, I found out about you guys because you had my friend Danny Klein Modisette on your
Yes.
show.
Yes.
And he's a dear friend. So a couple of the people are known to me personally. And then my researcher helped find the couple of other people. And, you know, it was so inspiring to talk to them. And they're all so wonderful. And I think this is a perfect time for this book because so many of us have been affected by the pandemic, have lost jobs. I've lost jobs. My production deal ended at CBS also. And they're being forced to figure out a new way forward. So there's that whole group of people who are, because of necessity, have to figure out a new way forward. And then there are people who, you know, have been at a job and have been working from home or have been furloughed for a while. And maybe they're thinking, gosh, now that we have this new perspective on life, is this what I want to go back to? Is this how I want to spend my life? I've you know, known people who their daughter was living a very high-powered life in New York and had to leave because of the pandemic and had a baby and has decided I'm not going back to that life anymore. I've been away from it now. I've been forced to be away from it, and I don't want to go back to that rat race. So, but then what do you do? Yeah. So I think this is a great book for anybody who either out of necessity or who've had a change of heart about their life, want to start dipping their toe in the water and seeing maybe what direction they could go in. And so we have a lot of different, you know, there's some very big people who have started big businesses. My friend Yudi Bennett, whose son is on the spectrum. She was a TV producer who started a graphic arts and computer animation school for people on the spectrum, which has turned into an actual studio. And they now have contracts with Marvel and HBO and other big companies and have their autistic and spectrum students doing computer graphics for them.
Yeah,
And that's it's one of my favorite organizations because as a parent, you know, I think we all worry about our kids and our kids who don't have spectrum issues or any other kind of issues. So imagine, you know, as a parent, you're just so worried about your kid's future and what's going to happen to them when you're gone. And, you know, she's really stepped in and created this incredible organization where these kids are taking care of themselves. They're becoming independent. They're learning how to be in the world. They're contributing something. They're feeling good about themselves because they have a skill that's needed. You know, so there's lots of different things you can do, whether you're going to start a business or a charity and it doesn't have to be, you don't have to start a cosmetics company. You can simply become a volunteer in your neighborhood and start with that and see where it takes you, you know.
Yeah, you mentioned baby steps. I wrote that down a lot because you were talking about, or you were referring to the movie What About Bob? And Bill Murray's baby steps.
Yes.
And yeah, I love that because you're right. So many people feel when they're starting something that they have to do everything, that it's got to be big and it's got to be this. But the baby steps it's just a great reference to go back to.
And also that it's got to be perfect. That's that's sort of my issue is perfectionism and having to know everything before going into something. And you just can't really learn that way. And you're really going to learn by the mistakes you make.
Mm-hmm.
And when you learn something, your mistakes become lessons, not failures.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and you know, there's no one way to start something new. I think I talk about leapers and planners.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been both. I've been both a leaper and a planner. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's easier to be a leaper when you're younger or when you have fewer responsibilities towards others.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can take some chances. When you're a parent or when you're responsible for other people, when you have maybe a little more at stake financially, that's probably a better time to be a planner.
Mm-hmm.
But both of them are useful at the right time, both
Mm-hmm.
approaches.
Mm-hmm.
With the book, in the very beginning, you talk about your own personal career and the fact that, you know, you don't come from a family of actors, you come from a family of journalists.
Mm-hmm.
So you just kind of followed that path, but you just felt that you were meant to be an actress. And what I thought was so fascinating was you moved to New York because you didn't have a car to go to California. So you went to New York and you put so much pressure on yourself in every audition. Can you talk about how that transitioned when you went to do the mission trip in Mexico and decided, okay, I think that would be great for a lot of the listeners.
Yeah. I've been sort of quote unquote performing since I could walk and talk. And there was very difficult for anybody to shut me up, you know? So I've been fortunate that way that I have had this drive since I was little. I think it's much harder if you don't know what you want to do or be in the world. I think the quote is the Mark Twain quote, the two greatest days in your life are the day you were born, and the second greatest day is the day you find out why.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew why from the beginning, although it was hard to embrace it because, as you said, all my family were journalists. But I'd always been, you know, acting, and, you know, and just I'd make up songs on the playground in the second grade. And then I'd come back and I would announce to Sister Delrina that I'd had a song I'd like to present to the class, you know. So yeah, pretty obnoxious kid. But I started as a journalism major at Ohio State because nobody else was in acting, and it's just kind of what you do. And, you know, and so I was very depressed though during college, and part of that was because my mother died when I was 12, but it was also I didn't know what I wanted to be doing, or I did know and I wasn't doing it. Maybe that's a better way to put it. And eventually my junior year of college, I called my dad, and I was sort of with trepidation saying, you know, I'm going to change into theater, you know, expecting some pushback, but he said, no, that's fine. Whatever you want to do. Because he didn't really think I was going to pursue it. So he didn't care. So then when I came home and told him I was moving to New York, he said, no, you're not moving to New York. And it's the first time I realized, I don't need his permission, which I sort of kindly said, Dad, I'm not actually asking you, I'm telling you what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, he gave me $800 to go and said, okay, good luck. And I can't imagine doing that with my kids today.
Yeah.
But I think his parenting style is probably better than mine, in that he just, you know, let me go out into the world and figure it out. I did move with a friend. Mm-hmm. So I had a place to stay there. And, and so I really just leapt. That was a leaper kind of move to make. Didn't have a job, didn't know what I was going to be doing. But I did know I really wanted to be an actress, and I worked for 9 years taking all kinds of classes and headshots and seeing therapists and a million survival jobs, and I wasn't really making any headway. And I was so determined. I was so eaten alive, really, with a lot of envy, seeing so many other people my age become famous and make it. And it was just eating me up inside. And I thought, what am I going to do? I cannot go back to Ohio having failed at this thing. And it was harming my auditions because the getting each role became too important. And it wasn't sort of about going in and creating a character for the casting director and the people, producers, it was like, I have to get this job to validate myself, to validate my existence. And that's not a good motivational energy to have. So I was there for 9 years, and then my then boyfriend, now husband, was going to LA, and he said, why don't you come out and produce the play that I produced in New York with me in it. That's the only way I could get a job. I had to produce the play. So I could cast myself in it. And by the way, I almost didn't get the part. See what I did there? And, but we went to, LA, and, I was raised very Catholic, and God has always been a part of my life. That's just always been there. And we went, one of the first things I'd always done wherever I go somewhere new is to go find a church in the new city. So we were at a Hollywood Presbyterian church, and we went on a sort of a 3 or 4 day weekend mission trip to an orphanage in Mexico. And up to that point, I was like, I have to be an actor, or I'll just have to kill myself, because I cannot fail at this. And then I started seeing in LA, this acting thing might not happen. I don't know what I'm going to do. I went to Mexico, was at this orphanage for the weekend. We laid down a lawn, we threw a party for the kids. I came back, and I felt this enormous sense of peace that I had never felt before. And I felt sort of released from this need to be an actor. And I thought, you know what, I could go back to Mexico and be completely happy working at that orphanage for the rest of my life. And so it occurred to me that I had really set this thing up. I thought I had really given my life to God, but I realized I had given my life to acting and was hoping God would get on board and open those doors for me. And so I was like, oops. And that sense of peace really helped me realize that. And so I just and at the time, I was living in my cousin's girlfriend's mother's back bedroom in West Hollywood.
Okay.
So super successful. And I just knelt down in that little bedroom, and I was like, okay, God, you take it. Here's the acting thing. If you want me to go back to Mexico, open that door really wide and shut down all the auditions. But if you want me to continue pursuing acting, then keep those auditions coming, and, let's open that up. But I'll do either one. At this point now, I realize I'll just do whatever you want me to do. And the auditions kept coming, and I started getting work. And just this last year, when I was in Rwanda with World Vision, I realized that at the moment that I had that revelation in my cousin's girlfriend's mother's back bedroom, I thought it was an either or proposition. Okay. But when I was in Rwanda, I realized that God gave me both in a much bigger way than I ever would have imagined, because I had a career I couldn't fathom. And I was in Rwanda for the 25th anniversary of the genocide, helping bring clean water there, which is a lot bigger than laying down a lawn in a small orphanage in Mexico. So I was so kind of blown away when I realized that when I was in Rwanda, that, God is so much bigger than our imaginations, bigger than what we can dream of for ourselves. Because I was thinking it had to be one or the other, and he gave me both on a scale that I could not have imagined.
That's amazing.
Yes, it is amazing. And in your book, you share just how the people of all the different areas in Africa that you've traveled to, and also how grateful they are. I know in your book you share how they have to go forever just to get clean water. But they're so grateful that you're there. And that was going to be, you kind of led into my story, was how that became a part of your life, the World Vision organization. But
Yes. And that's another sort of second or third act for me, but the seeds for that were planted many years ago. I talk about how I watched my dad, who was so nervous about money, and he had 5 kids. We were all in Catholic school, so he was paying school tuition on a newspaperman's salary, which wasn't very big. And yet, I remember I was allowed to take ballet lessons, but I wasn't allowed to be in the recital because he didn't want to pay for the costume. So, I mean, the only reason you take those bloody lessons is to get the costume.
Did it for 10 years, I know.
So that was a bit of a drag. So he really was nervous about money, except every month I saw him sitting at the dining room table, paying his bills and also sending money to charity. So he never said a word about it, but I always saw it. And so I always knew that was important. And my liaison at World Vision, Catherine Compton, we traveled together to all these places. And she said, look, there's 3 things we're required to do as Christians: help the poor, help the poor, help the poor. And so, to be able to use my platform to do those things is great. And it's an amazing lesson when we come back to this country. We see how much we all have, and yet we see the mess that we're in and the way we're treating each other. It's shameful. It's shameful.
It really is.
And that needs to change. And I'm not sure how we can change it, but there's got to be enough of us to do something about it. I don't know. We have to reach across the aisle with each other, and because we've been so blessed. And I just think it's such a sin to have all that we have and not be able to turn our attention toward helping others, as opposed to having our attention be put on hating each other.
That's very profound and very true.
Yeah,
absolutely. How has that affected your parenting? Because you are the mom of 4 sons. You were an empty nester, and then they came back. So,
which has been great, by the way. I mean, we all, it's fun to laugh about it and moan about it, but we just love having our boys around, and it's been great. And now things are a little bit better. The youngest has gone back to campus. He's at Ohio State. I think they're online still, but he's living in a house with his mates because this is his last year. Got another one at USC, and this is his last year there. And one son in Nashville, and one son's going back and forth between here and Nashville.
We are in Nashville. So
yes.
There you go. And how was it, you got I just blanked on you. You got the role of Deborah.
Yeah.
When you were in your 30s. So you already did you have 2 of your kids?
Yes.
At that point? How was it? Go ahead.
Yeah, no. The first season of Raymond, I had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I was pregnant with the 3rd.
Oh my gosh.
And the 3-year-old was in half a body cast because, like idiots, we had put him in a gymnastics class at the age of 3 because he was our first. And so, we were supposed to be like, you got to feed him soy and listen to Baby Einstein, which then you run around and you do all this stuff, and he ends up, fracturing his leg in this gymnastics class, and has to be in half a body cast. So I'd be wheeling him in a wheelchair with the 1-year-old and a baby Bjorn on my chest, and pregnant with the 3rd, while trying to figure out this character of Debra Barone. And then the 3rd season, I got pregnant with the 4th, which was quite a shock. They were, of course, gracious about it. And thankfully, we live in a time where you can't be fired off a TV show because you get pregnant. So, and everybody on the show was having babies. So it was kind of a wonderful time. And thankfully, the multi-camera schedule is very amenable to parenting. So, you go in about 10 o'clock and you're finished by like 5. And then you're off every 4th week during the season, and then you're off for 4 months over the summer. And the kids can come to rehearsal and hang out. And so it was really great to have all my kids while I was on Raymond. I don't remember shooting the show at all, but I heard it was a lot of fun, and I hear it's a funny show.
Yes, it was popular. That's what
Yes, it was. It was. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And then, go ahead, Colleen.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and then the middle, which is one of my favorites. Like,
it's a wonderful show.
It was so good. I just felt like that really depicted middle class. I mean, even, it really did, the struggles of real families in middle class. And I had a sister that really went into mourning when it went off the air. She really did. She was
so many people. And it was such, the finale was so phenomenal. And it was interesting to talk to our creators, Eileen Heisler and Deanne Helene, about it. They'd be wonderful people to have on this podcast, by the way. They're so terrific. They've been friends since college. They've been writing partners since they were at NYU.
Oh, okay.
We would love to have them on.
Yes. And we talked about how you would end it. And I said, one of my favorite endings on a series was from 6 Feet Under, which was a very dark show, HBO.
Yes.
About a family who runs a funeral home. But what they did at the and every episode of that show started with someone dying and then being brought to their funeral home. So at the beginning of every episode, you knew that the scene you were watching, someone in that scene was somehow going to die. It was the most tense way to have a Sunday night, was watching that show. You're like, oh, how is it going to happen?
Yes.
But they ended it by showing how all the characters die. So they flashed forward in everybody's life, and it was so moving. And I said, you know what? It would be really great to flash forward, not to everybody dying, but to just see who ended up doing what,
Right. Yes.
And which they did, and it was just so lovely, lovely.
With Axel having kids just like him.
Exactly.
That was so funny. That was great.
What do you hope to do now? I mean, you've won the Emmys, you've done the acting. I know you've talked about loving producing.
Yeah.
But what would you like to do in another act, I should say, because you already said next act.
Yeah. Right now we have this one movie to get finished, and we have about 2 or 3 more that we've developed over the years that we would like to produce in the coming years. And it's about getting financing, and it's about the industry having to open back up again and be able to do all that. So that's one thing that we have as goals, is to get these other movies finished that we've been working on for so long. And also we're still pitching some TV shows. And as an actress, I love comedy, and it's wonderful to do. It would be nice to stretch a little bit and do some drama. So on the acting side, that would be nice. Just unlike one of these, I don't want to do 15 years on Special Victims Unit, I love Mariska Hargitay. She's great, but I just couldn't, I don't think I could do that. But, to do one of these more 10 episode arcs, series kind of things, drama would be fun.
Like some on Netflix.
Yeah, something on Netflix. But other than that, I feel like I'm a little bit at a point, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners are too, of just, God willing, I'm 62, God willing, I have 30 years left, maybe 25 good ones where I'm still mobile and, being able to think straight. And to that end, I quit drinking 2 years ago just to make sure my brain was going to continue to function at as fully as possible. So that's been a big change for me, and a good one. And, so I've kind of, when I stopped drinking, and, the shows are ended. And so I'm kind of back in that position when I was in my cousin's girlfriend's mother's back bedroom in West Hollywood.